But this is our mini career chat on Librarian. And we are very fortunate to have two center alums joining us. And we have Beth Morgan, who I did not know. I know Beth just because we both work at Center, but I didn't know you were a Center grad. So I've already learned something. And she is the cataloging and special collections librarian, archivist as well at Center College. And then we have Kinsey Hisle, who I remember from being a student, a more recent graduate. And she is the youth services librarian at Boyle County Public Library. So they are both going to talk a little bit about their jobs and kind of how they got from Center to their jobs, and any key advice they might have for somebody who's interested in the field. I guess we'll kick it off. Do you mind? We'll go with seniority and have you start us off, Beth.
Okay, sure. So I'm Beth Morgan, and I work at the Center College Library as the cataloger, and I also work in the special collections and archives. So we're a really small staff at Center, so we can kind of touch on that. I'm sure Kinsey will have something to contribute to that part of the conversation too, but at Center we have a really small staff. So all of the librarians at Center kind of do pull double duty, and we do a couple of jobs that at other places would normally be split out into two different positions. So I keep pretty busy, and I graduated from Center, and I kind of came into librarianship. So when I was a student at Center, I intended to go to law school and be an attorney. And that was my plan until like spring term senior year. And I all of a sudden realized that I really did not want to be a lawyer. And so I was kind of like, well, okay, now what am I going to do? I've got one semester left, and I all of a sudden have no idea what I want to do with my life. So I just kind of thought about things that I liked to do or things that I was good at doing. That could possibly be a career. I spent a lot of time with the career services, staff. So I ended up going straight to library school from college to get my master's degree in library science because I loved books and I loved reading. I was an English major. And I thought that might be a good place to start. And I was also really interested in museums. And so I thought that getting a library degree could be sort of a stepping stone to getting into, working in a museum. So as it turns out, in library school, I got a job as a graduate assistant in the Young Library as a thesis cataloger. So I started cataloging in grad school, and I also had a work study job in the Special Collections and Archives department. So I found that I really liked the cataloging because that kind of spoke to my orderly nature and like a touch of OCD and rules. And so I really liked cataloging. But I also was really interested in the archival work that I was doing as a work study student as well. So it's cool that I got to do both as a student. And then out of library school, I was hired as a cataloger for a book jobber that provided shelf-ready materials to libraries. And so I was able to kind of expand my cataloging there because I worked on a variety of formats, print as well as audiovisual. And from there, I went on to work at the Library of Virginia in Richmond, Virginia, which is Virginia's state library. And I was a senior cataloger on the staff there for a couple of years, where I worked on things like books and maps and art. I got to catalog some of the artwork. And then I went over to a public school system and worked as the head cataloger for a public school system in Virginia. So from there, I came to Center. So I've kind of worked in a variety of library settings. And that was just kind of one thing that I wanted to point out to anyone who's interested in librarianship, is that it really is a really broad field that can, cater to just about any interest you might have. Because, there's academic libraries, there's public libraries, there's school libraries, there are research libraries, there are medical libraries, and then like within academic libraries, there are business libraries, there are science libraries, there's geology libraries. So I think that librarianship is a really good career opportunity for people who just, like helping people and want an opportunity to sort of like hone an interest at the same time. But it's also, I think, especially the public library sector is great for people who just kind of have a broad variety of interests, because I think you kind of get to do a little of everything in public libraries and, interact with the public. And so I think it's just a really great opportunity for people, like I said, who really enjoy helping people and just have a broad variety of interests, or are looking to hone in on that one particular interest that you have. Like with cataloging, I'm a technical services librarian, so I'm mostly like in the back. But again, in academic libraries, the catalogers, especially in large academic institutions, specialize in a particular subject for cataloging. So if you're like a Spanish major, and you love Spanish, you could be a Spanish language cataloger, at an institution. Or, if you like the sciences, you could be a science cataloger. So I just think there's a lot of opportunity there. So I don't want to talk too much because I want to give Kinsey a chance to talk too. So I'll just stop there. And if anybody has questions at the end, obviously you can ask them.
Thank you, Beth. Kinsey, you're up.
All right, so I'm Kinsey and I work at the Boyle County Public Library. I graduated from Center in 2015, so I'm more of a recent grad. And I went to get my master's right after Center. So when I was at Center, I would work summers at my hometown's public library. And I started as a page, which meant I just put away the books all day. And so books would come back in, I'd put away the books, and I liked that organization. And then I did a little bit of work at the circulation desk, which is more helping people check out, find books, that kind of thing. And then in following summers, I got switched to the youth services department, which I found that I really enjoyed. And so I got to help them with programming for their summer reading program and helping kids over the summer find books and families and that sort of thing. So by the time I was ready to graduate, I kind of knew that I wanted to do librarian work, but as Beth said, it's a pretty broad field, so I hadn't tried too many things yet. So I wanted to use my time in grad school to kind of see what academic libraries were like. So I went to UK and got a graduate internship my first year in the science and engineering library, specifically with their storage area. So I would go up to their 5th floor and pull some of the old stuff, scan it in, do ILO requests, interlibrary loan requests, things like that. And then my second year of grad school, I got a graduate assistantship position in the special collections department at their library. And so I would get given, they'd pull some bulletins from storage and be like, we need these cataloged. Will you catalog all of these? And then they're going to go back into storage. And so that's kind of how I learned cataloging a little bit, probably a bit more unconventionally, since it was all much older materials that were more specialized, things that the cataloger hadn't had time to do. And so that's why I was there, to do all of those other things. So I got some work in academic libraries. Just found that it didn't feel like as good of a fit for me as the youth services work in public libraries. And so I went back to that, and that's what I looked for a job for after my master's degree. And so Boyle County Public Library had an opening. I liked living in Danville when I was at Center, and so I came back, and I've been there for about 3 years. And at that job, I do a lot of programming for kids, specifically for the tween ages, so like the middle schoolers. And I do collection development, which is buying the middle grade books, adding those to the collection, taking out the old ones, kind of keeping that collection ready for them, and then in general working like an information desk to help families as they come in find what they need and make sure our services are good for the families as well. So that's kind of my path through librarianship. I definitely agree with Beth that there's something for everybody. I work a lot more with the public now, but there's also more office or technical work that you could do. There's even more work with the public if you wanted to do more of like a circulation desk type thing or reference where you're doing a lot more one-on-one. I kind of do more programming, so there's something for everybody, and it seems to fit for me.
Thank you, Kinsey. Okay, this is your chance. If you guys want to ask some questions, you've got two professionals in the field. And make sure you mute yourself before, or unmute yourself before you ask your question. The Zoom silence.
Well,
Okay.
one thing that I kind of forgot, because I just sort of gave a broad overview, but as I mentioned, I'm a technical services librarian, and as Kinsey said, there's there's public services and libraries, and there's technical services. And public services would be programming, circulation, reference, that type of thing, anything that's like forward facing to the public. And then technical services is like on the back end where we do things that sort of happen behind the scenes. And we don't interact with the public as much. And so I do cataloging. And then we also have like acquisitions, which involves like we have a person on staff who manages all of our accounts and pays for all our stuff, and keeps up with memorial funds, different funds that are used to purchase the books and things like that. There's also collection development. Those librarians work to build the collections in the library, and that can look kind of different depending on what type of institution you work at. But at Center, our collection development librarians work with the faculty to see what materials we should order for the library. And we also do reference and instruction. So, we'll teach some classes on information literacy. That's a big part of library work at academic institutions, is teaching students how to be, ethical and responsible and knowledgeable users of information. So, but with technical services and cataloging, we work a lot with metadata, and so if you're interested in programming, that's really big right now, I think, in the library field, because we use our what we call integrated library service systems, and those all require programming and like knowledge of APIs and different types of metadata. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, then cataloging could be a good area of librarianship for you. So
you can also put a question in the chat if you're more comfortable doing that. I don't want to stereotype, but I know that librarians are sometimes more introverted. Is that kind of the Okay, here we go. Are there any Elena did that. She said, are there any specific steps you would recommend current students taking who are interested in pursuing this career?
Well, I think for me, one thing that, I mentioned that I went straight to library school from college, and I think Kinsey did too. For a lot of people, people will come to library as sort of a second career, almost, because they have gone and like maybe they have taught or done something different. A lot of librarians have a second master's degree that they acquired before they got their MLS. And a lot of them even have PhDs. So I'm not really sure if there's a prescribed path. But if you know you do want to be a librarian, then you probably will want to go ahead and get your MLS, after college. I would recommend an ALA accredited program, and the University of Kentucky is one such program. There are many others, but I would definitely recommend an ALA accredited program. And one thing that I would highly recommend is that you volunteer as much as you can, or try to get a work study job in a library, because once you leave library school and you start applying for jobs, a lot of people want, people that already have experience, hands-on experience doing something. So whatever you can do to get ahead of the curve that way is what I would recommend, like just some hands-on, even if it's just volunteering at the public library. Just something that you can say, I have experience doing this, will go a long way towards getting you a foot in the door, and a kind of a leg up on other applicants for jobs coming right out of library school.
And I'll add to that, definitely the volunteering is important, I think, for also figuring out what type of librarianship you want to do. So I said it was important to me to dabble in academic libraries a little bit to see if that was something I wanted to do. While I was at Center, I volunteered at Tolliver Elementary's library, and I would just go and help their librarian put away books and talk to her about how school libraries were. So I definitely want to echo the getting your toes in a few different types of librarianship, even just job shadowing, asking, hey, can I shadow you for a day to see if you'd like that type of work. When I was at Center, the Career Center gave me a list of alum who I emailed and was just like, hey, interested in your field, what do you do? Can you give me any tips? And they were all more than happy to get back to us. I'm sure we would also be happy to email you further after this if you want as well. And then another thing on the master's side of, if you want to go ahead and get your master's degree, something I wish I had known is how online the programs are now. I had in my mind, just coming from Center, that I should stay in state or at least live near wherever I was getting my master's degree from, so I could do as many classes in person. But when I was at UK, I think at least 2 of the in-person classes I signed up for got canceled because not enough people signed up. And so most of the program was online, which was definitely a shift from Center, but doable. I'm sure you all are going to be way more used to it than I was with all of the virtual classes that have gone on this year. And so that's just something that I wish I had known, that a lot of the programs are online now. So if you liked a program that's in another state, you could for sure still do it and do it online. And that's just not something I knew at the time. So just wanted to add that as well.
Good, good. Also, if you guys are comfortable with students contacting you, you can put your email in the chat, and then that way they can get it. They'll sometimes forget after this how to contact you. Do we have any other questions that you guys want to ask? No? Oh, okay, there we go. Let me see. So I'm going to ask a question because I want to utilize you guys. What would be the single best piece of career advice that you would give somebody who's starting out or interested in this field?
Good question.
Yeah.
I think we've hit on it some with being able to try out a different kinds of librarianship. And I think knowing what areas you're interested in, specifically, like if you want to do more of the technical services or the public services areas. So I think we've already hit on it a little bit. I'm trying to see if I can come up with any great words of wisdom here.
Well,
Yeah,
it's just
I think,
yeah, you don't have to do it. Just if there's something that was a kind of a burning thing that you had thought about.
I would say I agree with Kinsey. I think the biggest thing is trying to figure out because it is such a broad field, really trying to determine and narrow down what you're most interested in, and, how you think you want to contribute to the field, or, because, like I said, being in an academic library is so different from a public library. There are tons of similarities, but at the same time, essentially the mission and vision of each institution is totally different, in terms of who you're serving and how. So I think trying to get as much experience as you can, or talk to people from the different institutions to get a feel for what they do, will be a big help in trying to figure out what direction you want to take. And once you do that, like for example, in my field, in an academic library, it's real technology oriented, like even if you're not a technical services librarian, if you're a reference librarian, you have got to be familiar with all the digital databases, all the online content. So there's just so much technology and so many digital resources that you have to be familiar with and know how to use those tools. So I think familiarizing yourself with technology is probably a good thing you could do too, no matter what area you go into.
Mhm. Yeah, specifically for me, the graphic design tools and things I've used a lot more than I thought I would. It probably falls under the category of like what I wish my master's degree had taught me a little better is some of those graphic design skills, because I use it a lot for like marketing and PR, making book lists for kiddos and stuff like that. My programming specifically is more like event planning, so we'll do different types of things for the kids to come and enjoy at the library. That could be like a STEM experiment or a craft, games, things like that. Obviously this year that looks a little bit different because we've had to go virtual. So a lot of what I do right now is like making a grab bag of the supplies, and then they can come and get it and they'll watch a video. So I've also had to learn how to like be an amateur YouTuber with making the program videos as opposed to doing it in person. So definitely more technology use than I thought at the beginning, which is okay. Center taught us to figure things out and learn, so you roll with it. And then I would say on the public services side, it's a lot of those kind of skills. So the talking to people, making sure they are able to ask you the right questions so then you can help them figure out what they're looking for. Sometimes a kid will come in and be like, I like books about, I don't know, dinosaurs. And then you got to ask them the follow-up questions to figure out what kind of books they really like or things like that. So on the public services side, it's a lot of those like people skills as well. I think the stereotype of librarian is more like sitting in a, I don't know, back office and not seeing people, but even those technical services skills, you work with your colleagues a lot. You're still serving the public, and then on the public services side, you definitely have those people skills as well.
You have time for another? Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
I was just going to say that I kind of have a funny story, sort of along with the the stereotype of of librarians, that we just go around like shushing people. I have never shushed anybody ever, but I have been shushed by a student. So I just want to say that I have never been shushed, or never shushed anybody, but I have been shushed by a non-librarian in the library.
Beth is the loud librarian.
Apparently.
Well, I'll ask one more quick question. Hopefully this can, it's pretty quick. So to each of you, what do you like least about what you do? And then what do you find most rewarding? Because I like to be honest about what's maybe the part that's not that much fun. And if you can't tolerate that, what might be worth considering?
Well, I would say for me, the least favorite thing I do is like rote copy cataloging. And that doesn't make sense to anyone because you're not a librarian yet, and cataloging is its own like thing. But I really like doing original cataloging because that's where I get to use my brain more, and it's thinking and I get to do it all from scratch. But when I copy catalog, it's basically just like checking to make sure that something matches up with something else and then moving it along through the pile. And that, to me, that gets kind of boring after a while. So I would say that's my least favorite thing, part of my job. But for me, the most rewarding thing is just I really like helping people. And I get to do that every day, when I go to work. And, like Kinsey said, tech services is sort of a behind the scenes, but I have always seen tech services as a public service also, because people can't find what they're looking for if I don't set it up correctly in the catalog. And so I constantly work with our acquisitions librarians and our reference librarians to figure out how can I best provide access to things. And so I think for me, I like knowing that I'm helping somebody like find what they need, and not just find what they need, but learn along the way, learn through the process, that they are learning how to be independent thinkers and learners when they come into the library and use our resources. And I'm just kind of a small part of helping them along the way.
Mhm. Yeah, I think for me, statistics is my least favorite. That time of the month when I need to report all of my statistics from stuff I've done that month. So that kind of data crunching isn't my favorite thing to do. But then I get to look at the data after and see like how I should adjust. And so then I like it a little bit better after that. I think another frustrating part, not necessarily something I dislike doing, but a frustrating aspect would be the waiting for change to happen in like a bigger institution when you're talking about services and things you want to provide. I think I can be like, oh, we should change that right away. And then I take a step back and be like, well, you got to go through the process and make sure you're going to fit into the institution's goals, and not just like your department or your specific job. The pandemic has been good in that it has kind of upended everything. And so we've made a lot of good change this year, as well as the change we haven't liked so much. So those are just a couple things that came to mind. In terms of what I like best, it's similar to what Beth said, helping people, getting to work with the public, especially the kids for me. So helping those kids, especially that middle school age that I work with, they can kind of be in between, like if they're really going to still like reading or if it's just going to become like more of a homework or a chore for them. So getting to help them find books that keep them liking reading and keep them coming back, helping them find new series, them coming in and telling me like, oh, I learned like this new game, or or I got to read this new series, is really nice. So helping foster that love of reading and learning for them. And then just making the library, the public library in particular, like a good community institution. So anytime we get to partner with people or organizations in the community, and that the community feels ownership of their public library too, that it's really there to help them. So being a part of the community and getting to do that work collaboratively and together is something I really enjoy.
Well, this has been good information, and we very much appreciate both of you taking time to join us. Thanks so much.
Thanks for
No
having us.
problem. Yeah. I always love talking about libraries and librarianship. So if anyone wants to contact me later, I put my email, and when the library's open again and it's safe to have face-to-face interactions, feel free to stop by and visit me. My office is in the back, but the public services librarians can show you where to find me. And I will also just say, I don't think any librarian on the center staff would be upset with me for saying that any of them would be happy to talk to you at any time about the work that they do. So feel free to talk to, any of us. If cataloging is not your thing, but references, hit up one of our reference librarians, because we all would like for anyone who's interested in this career to have the information that they need. So
Same here. Feel free to email me, or when you can come to the public library, feel free to do so. We're on reduced staff capacity right now, so I'm usually just there on Fridays in the children's department, the information desk looks like a tree, so you can't miss it. Or feel free to come in and talk to any of us at the public library. We're definitely here for you all to use as well.
Thank you. Thank you. Beth, you're muted.
I just want to put my 2 cents in for the Boyle County Public Library because it's an amazing library and we are super lucky to have it here in Danville. So,
And lucky to have Kinsey working there. So
yes.
Thank you.
thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
See you later.